David Hein and Irene Sankoff were living in New York City during the terrorist attacks of 9/11. 10 years later, they found an incredible story in their own home country that has now served as the basis for their first Broadway musical, the acclaimed Come From Away. The show tells of a group of travelers who were redirected to the tiny town of Gander in Newfoundland and the locals who took them in. We invited the talented songwriters to our studio to find out more about the creation of this sleeper Broadway sensation.
Welcome to the Rock. If you come from away, you probably understand about a half of what we say. They say no man's an island, but an island makes a man, especially when one comes from one like Newfoundland. Welcome to the Rock. I am an islander. I'm an islander. I am an islander. I'm an islander. I am an islander. I'm an islander. I am an islander.
Welcome to the lands where the winters tried to kill us, and you said
We will not be killed. Welcome to the land where the waters tried to drown us, and we said we will not be drowned.
to the lands where we lost our loved ones, and we said
We will still go on. Welcome to the land where the winds tried to blow, and we said no. Welcome to the fog. Welcome to the trees, to the ocean and the sky, and whatever's in between. To the ones who left, you're never truly gone. Our candles in the window and the kettle's always on. When the sun is coming up and the world has come ashore, if you're hoping for a harbor, then you'll find an open door. In the winds from the water, through whatever's in the way, to the ones who have come from away. Welcome to the Rock. So that was Welcome to the Rock. That's the opening song of the show, and I grew up on Newfoundland music, so it was our first chance. It was the first song we wrote for the show.
Yeah.
And it was our first chance to really play in that sandbox that I had always wanted to dive into. We lived down here for a long time in New York, and then we moved back to Toronto. And between day jobs and night jobs, we never saw each other. We were married, but we never had time to actually spend time together. So in 2009, we thought, why don't we write a show together? Let's put something on in the Fringe, and we'll at least get to spend the summer together.
Yeah.
And so we put on a show called My Mother's Lesbian Jewish Wiccan Wedding, which is a true story about my mom and about how she came out to me, how she discovered that she was a lesbian, how she rediscovered her Jewish faith, and how she fell in love with a Wiccan woman and got married. It sold out, and it took off, and the Mervish production company picked it up, and suddenly we had to quit our day jobs, and suddenly we were writing partners.
We're writers.
And now we
Yeah.
spend all our time together every second of the day. Our friend Michael Rubinoff had introduced us to the story, but it really started when we went out to Newfoundland. We got a grant from the Canadian government. We found out there was a commemoration ceremony happening. Everyone was traveling back there, pilots and passengers, to reunite with the friends they had made, to commemorate what had happened out there. And it's hard to get out to Gander, so it was a long way for them to go, and it really, there's a testament to that. And we went out there and we interviewed as many people as we could. We didn't really know what we were looking for, and there was all this press in town looking for 5-second sound bites, and we were looking for anything. And so we ended up interviewing people for hours at a time, and then they invited us home and fed us and gave us the keys to their house. They'd be like, "Oh, don't be spending money on a hotel, come stay with us," and they'd just leave, and we'd be in their house, and then they'd say, "You might want to lock the door just in case someone stops by for tea the next morning," and we'd be like, "That's clearly crazy." And in the morning, there'd be someone sitting having tea in their kitchen, and he'd be like, "Oh, you're awake, I wanted to show you around town."
it was just so nice to know that, well, all these years later, even, it's 10 years later we went out there, we're like, oh wow, while this horrible thing was happening and we were thinking it was like the end of the world and the worst thing ever, there was these people who were like, we got you, whatever we can do to help, we will be here for you, we will just make this awful, horrible experience as comfortable for you as you can.
Yeah.
And it was just, it was extremely moving.
Newfoundlanders are natural-born storytellers, so they're the amazing storytellers. So every story we fell in love with, and we came back with, we talk about 16,000 stories. There were 7,000 people on the plane and almost 9,000 people in the town, and we wanted to tell all of them in a 100-minute musical with 12 actors. So it's been a process of editing down, but also taking the verbatim text and translating it into scenes, into lyrics, into you know, and trying to figure out what are the through lines, what are the anecdotes that we can string along, and what the style is. You know, it's been a really hard process, and the music actually helped a lot. So we thought we'd bring in one of the transcripts of one of the interviews that we did with Captain Beverly Bass, the first female captain of a commercial airline, who's amazing and could have been a musical all her own. After we interviewed her, we were like, let's just do Beverly Bass the musical. But instead, we decided, for some reason, to tell her entire life story in one song. So we thought we'd read some of it, and then we'll read a little, do a little bit of the song, and just show how it translated in. So at 56 seconds in our interview, she said, "I was one of those kids that told their parents early on. I was about 8 when I told them that I wanted to be a pilot. They thought they had this crazy kid on their hands, but I never lost that desire. I was obsessed with airplanes, and I always wanted to hang out at the airport. Always wanted to have somebody drive me out and watch the airplanes come in and land. And when I was 16, I wanted to take flying lessons, but my father would not let me. So when I left for college, I immediately started flying." So here's how we translated that into a song.
My parents must have thought they had a crazy kid, 'cause I was one of those kids who always knew what I wanted. They took me down to the airport to see all the planes departing, watching them fly. Something inside of me was starting. I was 8 when I told them that I'd be a pilot, but I was too young and too short, and there were no female captains. And my dad said, "Be patient," he said, "just see what happens." But I took my first lesson, came down from the sky, and told my father I'd fly for the rest of my life.
So at 6:50, she then says, "My first flying job was flying bodies for a mortician. So I flew dead bodies. The airplane was this very small Bonanza, so only one body at a time, not in a casket, on a stretcher. And because the cargo door was only this big, so to get the body in, it's strapped on a stretcher, you have to turn it. 2 back seats are taken out, the front seat's folded down, and like I climb over their face to get to my seat. $5 an hour, and they don't complain. And I was getting paid, and up until that point, I had to pay to get my licenses and ratings, so I was ecstatic. I thought it was the best job in the world."
Let me switch that to... And I got my first job flying for a mortician in a tiny Bonanza, just a corpse and me. $5 an hour for flying dead bodies. I had to climb over their faces just to get to my seat.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of a verbatim.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the more direct songs that we did, but again, it's Beverly Bass, how could you not? Every word she said was amazing. We had to composite a lot of the characters together and amalgamate some of the storylines just in order to do it with 12 actors, even though they all play a million parts, and switch from, they all play a local and a come from away at the very least, but they all play about 5 main roles and then a million others. But part of the challenge was sort of how do we piece it together? How do we combine all of it? And still, we tried to keep every story we possibly could. So there was a story about the pharmacist. It used to be an entire scene where he was filling prescriptions from around the world in different languages, and we got that down to one line that the reporter just says, Dr. O'Brien down at the pharmacy is trying to fill prescriptions from around the world. And there's another thing about the air traffic controllers who had nothing to do because there was no planes in the air, so they just made chili constantly. And there's a whole scene about, there was a whole thing, and now Doug, our air traffic controller, walks in at one point and says, "Bonnie, I brought you some chili." And it was important to us to keep it in there, but what's the cool part is the air traffic controllers who come to see the show are like, "You got the chili in, you got it!" And that's, it means the world to us that that's what we wrote it for. We didn't intend to write a Broadway show. We wanted to write a show that the people we interviewed would come to see and would be proud of, and that would honor them and tell their story. One of the songs that I think has changed the most is a song called "Costume Party," which was initially inspired by, there was one of the things that people out of Newfoundland did was they donated all of their clothing. So everyone arrived looking one way, and then by the next morning, they'd already been on the planes for 28 hours at least. They couldn't wait to get out of their clothes and try something on. So the next morning, everyone was looking different and had changed, and they were starting to meet people, and people, like everywhere, changed. This was a moment that everyone changed, and there was this moment of being not only who are all these people, but who am I?
Changing into another woman's donated set of clothes.
Looking different, feeling kinda different too.
I can't quite explain.
But when I woke,
When David wasn't on that plane,
it's like I changed into somebody else, but who? And it's somehow like we're at a costume party, and for a second you are not yourself. And you look around and blink your eyes and barely even recognize the person in the mirror who's turned into someone else.
Now I'm a different character.
And I am too.
Praying for a phone call.
Praying for a way home.
Asking questions.
Asking, can I get back on that godforsaken plane?
And all around me people chat.
And people act like nothing's happened, and I need to hear we're going back before I go insane. And it's somehow like we're stuck here at a messed up costume party, and there's nothing here familiar
away from those we care for.
on an isolated island in between.
There and here.
There and here.
So this is the last song that we added to the show, and it was while the show was still running in Toronto, and we were finishing the cast album, and we were going to have it ready for Broadway. You know, so we had all of our songs at 4 or 5 other cities, and this one was just going in. And it came out of our last person that we interviewed, which was Hannah O'Rourke, who's a mother of a firefighter who died in the towers.
So there was something about spending time with Hannah and her family that reminded us that there was still something more to say. And I think watching, you know, our daughter and Hannah's grandkids run around, there's something about parents that resonated with us. It also speaks to us being New Yorkers as well, and feeling like we were here in this moment as well, and wanting to represent that fear of being elsewhere. I'm here on an island. Hello, hello, it's me again. Yeah, my son, he's with Rescue 2. Any news? I am his mother, I'm far away, stuck here. I'm trying to find out if fine I'll hold again. I should be down there and checking the hospitals, putting up signs, doing something. Instead, I am here. I am here in Canada. I am telling you, listen, my son, he takes risks, he's not missing, he's helping or hurt, he'll get out of this. Yes, I'll keep trying, and yes, here's the number, and yes, at the grade school in Gander, I'll be here. I should be there when it's over and done, when he comes through the door and says, I'm home, Mom. I should be there for my son, but instead I am here. I am here. All I know is you are there, you are there, and I am here.
One of the things we realized as we were writing the piece was there are ways to fictionalize what happened out in Newfoundland, and it's been done. You know, there's a TV movie, and I think there's more than one book, and there's one-person shows. This isn't the first material to cover this story, but just talking to the people, they were more complex and more heroic and more inspiring than anything that we could have made up.
I mean, it's not about 9/11, but it's set against the backdrop of it. So bringing it back here feels like it resonates much more with New York audiences, but it also it resonates more with us. We were here, our director was here, our some of our cast was here, our producers were here, and it feels like that's a homecoming for us, bringing the show back here, and it's important. It's been good for us to share it. This is about two of the passengers who we interviewed, Nick, who is from England, and Diane, who is from Texas, who ended up spending 5 days together in Gambo, actually, one of the smaller towns next to Gander. And they slowly started falling in for each other, and then near the end they realized that they were going to be leaving each other, going to be pulled apart, and they were out on this amazing lookout, which is this cool metaphor where the continents of the world all came together at one point millions of years ago and then pulled apart, and it was just amazing that they were there. And Nick had been taking pictures the entire time, and he pulled out his camera and took a picture, and Diane said, I should get out of the way, I should get out of the way, and he said, no, it's perfect. And at that moment she realized he wants to remember me, and it's just they're this amazing couple. And this is their song. Stop the world, take a picture, try to capture, to ensure this moment lasts. We're still in it, but in a minute, that's the limit, and this present will be past. So here we are, where the world has come together. So here she'll be in this picture forever.
Stop the world, seize the moment, but the minute he goes, you're alone and it's through. Pinch yourself, tell yourself you're just dreaming, that means he'll forget about you.
But here we are, where the continents once crashed together before they went their separate ways forever. So stop the world,
Stop the world,
stop the world,
stop the world,
stop the world from spinning round. I'm on a lookout, overlooking something worth taking the time to stop flying by and look down. Stop being scared and look around. Just tell her now and look now. Take a picture of the scenery, of a lookout, of a moment which is over, of the ocean, of the river, of the trees. Stop the world,
please.